Hi guys, welcome to Little Wicket Railway. I'm Rob and in this video we're giving the Hornby Class 66 an upgrade. This Class 66 is in the new Belmont Royal Scotsman livery and I think it looks really good. The livery was announced as part of the 2023 Hornby product range, but the tooling definitely isn't new for 2023. I think it's actually an old Lima tooling dating back to the 1990s. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad model, it's just a bit basic, but that is reflected in the retail price of just over £80. There aren't many separately fitted parts, it's lacking in fine detail, especially when compared with the Hatton's Class 66 from recent years. Mechanically, Hornby have upgraded the motor from the Lima days, but there's still only one driven bogie. Electrically, it's got a good number of pickups and it is DCC ready, which is great, but there's no lighting, and I think that's the main thing that's letting this model down. The headlights and taillights are just painted on. So I wondered how easy it would be to add some directional LED lighting, and whilst doing my research I came across this kit from Illuminated Models, and I thought I'd give it a go and I'd like to show you how I got on. Before we start though, please do subscribe to the channel for more model railway content. I would really appreciate it, and if you want even more railway content, then did you know I have a second channel called LWR2 for all the content that's a little bit different and doesn't quite fit the main channel. So maybe go check that out as well. Okay, let's fit some lighting. So I'm pretty sure I've got everything I need. I've got my Class 66 here. I've got my Illuminated Models kit with the instructions. I have got a mini drill with a 0.5mm drill bit, a 1mm drill bit and a 2mm drill bit, which is what the instructions tell me that I need. I've got a small crafting knife because I need to cut something out of here according to the instructions. And I've got a screwdriver because I'm going to change this socket to an 8-pin socket so that I can use this Class 66 old Hornby TTS decoder. And I thought I would just be able to plug this in because on their Hornby's website and in the instructions this is advertised as being an 8-pin model, but it clearly isn't an 8-pin model. So I'm gonna change this to be an 8-pin model by putting the socket in place. Some people might think that's a step backwards, but this model does not need a 21-pin decoder, and I have an 8-pin decoder I'd like to use. I could have used an adapter. You just need to move this to somewhere where this will fit in, but I thought it would be neater, given that we're going to do the lighting kit anyway, to just change the socket. I can always change it back if I want to add a 21-pin decoder later on. So step one, according to the instructions, is to clip out the cabs. And I didn't realise I was going to have to remove the cabs when I bought the kit, because I would quite like to have cabs in the model, ideally. We've got to remove those for now though. Step two is using the drill bit to drill out, if I can get this to focus, drill out. We've got 2 lights on this side, 2 lights on this side, and 1 light in the middle. They recommend starting with the 0.5mm drill bit, going up to the 1mm drill bit, and then using the 2mm drill bit. So that's step one. It might be quite difficult to catch this on camera, but I'll do my best. And it was quite hard to capture on camera. I also found it quite hard to drill the holes holding the body in one hand and the drill in the other. If I was to do this again, then I would try clamping the body in a vise to hold it perfectly still whilst drilling. The drilling also took quite a lot longer than I anticipated using the small hand drill. If you've got a mini power drill with good speed control, then you might consider using that. As recommended by the instructions, I'm starting with the 0.5mm drill bit to make an initial hole, which will open up later using the larger diameter drill bits. I'll put affiliate links to the tools I'm using in the video description below. The most important thing with these holes is that you get them dead center from the start, because if your first holes are slightly off, then it's hard to correct that when you start making them bigger. 1 hole done, and now onto these 2 and these 2. So drilling was a bit tedious, but that's all the 0.5mm holes drilled, so it's time to take it away and expand them to 1mm. So it's fairly easy to open these up using the 1mm drill bit. 3 of them are fairly central, 2 of them are slightly off. Hopefully they'll still be okay when I use the 2mm drill bit. Well, that was incredibly stressful. Enlarging the holes to 2mm was actually quite difficult. The plastic surrounding the holes gets really narrow in places. After drilling the top centre light and the two outer headlights using the 2mm bit, I decided to use a 1.8mm bit for the inner tail lights instead, just to give that extra margin around the hole, and I think that was probably the right move. It looks like the LEDs match up nicely with the holes I've drilled, and then we've obviously got the centre light that goes in up here. So now it's time to repeat the process at the other end. All the holes are now drilled. I messed up one when I did the second set, and I'll show you that later. But the next step is to test fit the PCBs in the chassis, and the instructions say that they might need to be slightly filed down to fit. And yep, it looks like this one doesn't quite go in, so I'll give it a slight file down on either side, not too much because I still want a tight fit, and the lights do need to be right up against the front of the chassis. So the board now fits in at this end, but you might be able to see that when it's in place, the lights are partially obscured by the chassis. So in the instructions it says that we need to cut down and remove some of the plastic here. I only want to cut out the minimum amount of plastic required, so I'm going to mark either side of where the lights are as a guide to where I need to cut. And just to make doubly sure that I cut the right places, I've put the body back on and I'm marking the positions of the lights by pushing my pencil through the holes. So I'm fairly sure where I need to cut, and it's time to get the knife out. And this is pretty nerve-wracking because if I mess this up, then it's going to be pretty obvious, and it's going to be a real pain to fix. This actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. First I cut down either side, then cut out the middle, and finished it all off with the square file. So the hole has been made. Will the light shine through? That positioning looks about right to me. I thought I'd try with the body on, and reassuringly I can see the LEDs through the holes, so that's a good sign. Now let's do the other side. This end is pretty much done now. I'll do the same at the other end, and then it's time to sort the wiring out so I can turn the lights on. So this wiring took quite a while, and I'm only going to show you the highlights. First, I removed the 21-pin socket by taking out the two screws and desoldering the two wires that go to the motor. The 8-pin harness I'm using came pre-wired, so first I needed to remove the orange wire so that I could connect to one of the motor wires, and then I removed the grey wire and connected the other motor wire, and that's the motor completely wired up to the 8-pin socket. And it doesn't matter if I've got these the wrong way round, as the motor direction can be changed using the decoder. Next, I removed the green wire from the harness because I'm not using it, and the fewer wires the better. Then it was time to solder the yellow, blue and white wires to the PCB that came with the lighting kit. The instructions are really clear on which wire to solder where, and I started by adding some solder to each of the pads on the PCB before connecting each wire in turn. Yellow for the rear lights, blue for the common positive, and white for the front lights. You can also use this kit with analog DC models, and there are separate solder pads for those connections. Then the only thing left to do was move the pickup wires from the 21-pin socket to the 8-pin harness. Again, I removed the red and black wires which were already on the harness and soldered on the wires from the model. The only slightly tricky thing here is that the model has pickups on both bogies, which means there are two wires to be connected to each of the pickup pins, but if you twist them together before soldering, it makes it much easier. Then it was just a case of putting the PCBs in place, plugging in the Hornby TTS sound decoder, and getting the model on the rolling road. So you can see and hear that it's all working. We've got the white lights on and the centre light, and if I change direction on the controller, we can see the red tail lights. And when the red lights are on at one end, we've obviously got the white lights at the other end. If I change direction, the red tail lights come on. Next, I fitted the top marker lights, which was a bit fiddly, and I ended up using a bit of super glue just to hold these in place. The wires are nice and long though, so you can still easily remove the body from the chassis without pulling on the LEDs. So this is what it looks like with the body on. And before I glue the PCBs permanently in place, I just want to make sure that the LEDs are coming through the holes. And I'm pretty happy with the positioning, and everything seems to be nicely aligned. But to really finish everything off, the kit comes with some small pieces of acrylic rod which can be used as headlights. The advice is to file any sharp ends and then slide the rod into the holes. I started with one of the headlights, which I used the 2mm drill bit for, and it went in very easily. Then the advice was just to trim off any excess using snippers.
Then I did the same again with the tail light, but for these holes I'd used the 1.8mm drill bit, which meant that it was a much tighter fit, but the rod still did just about go in. I didn't do a great job of trimming the end flush on this one, so I had to trim it and file it down afterwards. And these acrylic rods make a huge difference to the effectiveness of the lights. You can see here the lights fitted with the acrylic on the right, which are now much brighter than those which haven't had them fitted yet on the left. The other thing I noticed is that when set to forward, there's quite a bit of light bleed between the lights. So I fixed this by putting a thin blob of black tack between them, and this just solves the issue. And after fitting all the other bits of acrylic, this is the final result with the PCBs glued in place. I said I'd show you the light I messed up, and it's this one. The hole was drilled too close to the edge, and when I put the acrylic in, the corner broke away. Fortunately, I was able to find it and glue it back in. Up close, it's probably noticeable, but from a normal viewing distance, I don't think you could tell. I also realised that the cabs could be refitted. You just need to remove 2 to 3mm from the front so that it sits over the PCBs, and once the body is back on, you can't see that area anyway. So there we are, lights and sound fitted to the Hornby Class 66. I quite enjoyed installing the Illuminated Models kit. It took a little while and maybe I didn't do the best job, but overall I'm pretty happy with the results and I think it brings the model to life. I'll put links to Illuminated Models and the tools in the video description below. If you found this video useful, then please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. A massive thank you to all the members and patrons for their support. It's very much appreciated and their names are on screen now. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll hopefully see you again soon.